Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session on the final day of the week of VocTech. Today, you've got the great opportunity to meet our fantastic board of trustees and ask them some questions about UFI VocTech and how they see the importance of it. I am Karen Monaghan. I am the board secretary at UFI, and so I work closely with the board. I'd like to explain a little bit about what the board does. I'm sure most of you know the role of trustees, but our trustees are very key in the strategic vision of UFI and making sure that we are making the best use of our funds. They take a great interest, as hopefully many of you have seen in their sessions this week. You can ask questions during the session using the chat channel to the right of the screen. And we are going to respond to some pre-submitted questions first, but there will be time for you to ask questions at the end. If you do have any issues using Hopin, please visit the help desk where a member of the team will be able to help you. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce our Chief Executive, Rebecca Garrett-Waters, who will say a few words about our Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Karen. And yes, welcome to this session to meet the trustees. It's been a really exciting week of VocTech, and this is the final day. Just two more events to go, but hopefully everyone's had a chance to engage with all the things that have been going on. And I'm looking forward to a really good discussion with the trustees this morning. So we have a wonderful board of trustees and who you're about to meet, who bring a huge wealth of expertise, understanding, diversity of experience, and perhaps most importantly, passion to the work of UFI. So the trustees are going to be discussing our work and the things that are critical to the delivery of the UFI mission. And as Karen said, it's also your opportunity to ask questions. We have had some submitted in advance, which will inform the discussion. But please do ask things as they crop up in your mind whilst we're talking, or whilst the conversation is going on. Pop them in the chat. There should be an opportunity to explore those later. I wanted to touch very, very briefly on the work of UFI and what's been happening over the last year. We supported 52 new VocTech innovations, and we've worked with over 100 organisations over the past year with active projects, and made 750,000 investment in UFI ventures. Encouraging 1.2 million of co-investment in UFI ventures. And lots of these statistics and details on our work can be found in our annual review, which is now live on our website. So if you're interested in what we've been up to over the past year, please do take a look. I would like to introduce Dom, our chair. He's going to talk a little bit about his vision and passion for UFI, and it's absolutely lovely to have you with us this morning, Dom.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I mean, I just echo some of your comments, actually. It's been a fantastic week of VocTech. I've thoroughly enjoyed all the events I've been involved with, whether that was our project investment and stakeholders, meeting them at Monday's launch, the really good fun Wednesday showcase when you and I were on a boat with Thomas. That was fantastic. And actually, to top it all, we were at the Learning Awards on Wednesday night, where we not only and our projects got a bronze and silver award, we also won a gold award, which was really lovely to top that off. So hopefully today, be a really informative session. I'm so chuffed that we've got all the trustees or virtually all of our trustees on the call today. Maybe just mentioning a couple of words about where I think it's important that we still continue to focus. I think it's definitely worth saying that we're going to remain committed to supporting increased opportunity through adult vocational skills, and that's what we're all about. We're going to achieve this by deploying and championing VocTech, so the technology for vocational skills. We're going to continue to demonstrate through a phrase that you use an awful lot, Rebecca, but it's the right one. And whether this is funding projects that have been established to address a specific need, or whether it's venture investing in early stage companies to reinforce their commercial opportunities for VocTech and really reinforce how the VocTech community can continue to grow. So I'm also keen, though, that we continue to work on our public affairs activity, because I think this is important in ensuring that the policy landscape meets the solutions that we're looking to fund and the solutions that have been identified. And I know that's, as a critical friend, that's something that we're going to be looking to do more and more over the coming years. And I think building on that, we're focusing very much on partnerships as well. So partnerships with key organisations that share our vision and passion. I think that's going to be a great way that we can continue to amplify what we do and really get, pardon the phrase, bigger bang for our buck. So I think the last 2 years, as we've all seen, have accelerated existing or revealed new skills challenges for the UK workforce. But I genuinely feel that they've brought digital technology to the fore. So and it's our challenge, and the challenge of the team and the trustees and all the projects and investments that we make, is to continue to highlight how tech can be used in the right way to solve these problems and really continue to change people's lives. And I'm confident that UFI can achieve this. And that's not only through the incredible team, Rebecca, that you have and that you've established in the organisation, but by the truly amazing group of trustees that I feel privileged to work with every time we meet. It's just amazing, the talent, the passion, the enthusiasm that we all, they constantly demonstrate. And I think that's awesome. So really looking forward to how we can work together to build on our already impressive work. And I'm really looking forward to everybody else meet the trustees today. So Karen, back to you to bring us all in.
Thank you very much, Dom. I'm hoping everyone will just about appear on the screen for us so we can start chatting to them. Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us again this morning. So let's kick off with some of the questions that we've had submitted already. So an interesting question to start with. Work is changing. How will the trustees ensure that UFI stays relevant with that? Julia.
You're on mute, Julia, I'm afraid.
Rookie error. You'd think by now you're used to this, but hey, it still catches us out. And I was just saying hello and welcome and thank you very much for this opportunity to talk to everybody this morning, along with my fellow trustees. It's a real pleasure. And I have to say this week has just been fantastic in terms of the showcase, and also as a trustee really affirming as to why we do this and why we're involved with an organisation like UFI. It really at the end of the day, I do this because we want to make a difference, and an organisation like UFI really does make that difference. And this week has just shown how the end users really benefit from what we do, and that for me is part of it. So, I think I honestly believe that having a relevant perspective is one of the important things that trustees can really bring to UFI. We are all actively working. And so we are all exposed to the world of work, and we bring our own experiences and an external viewpoint into UFI. Between us, we have a real breadth of experience and a huge range of skills. Although each trustee brings a unique but highly relevant perspective, whether that's people who are experienced at the trainer end and who are deeply embedded in the skills in the skills landscape, whether they're from an employer perspective, such as myself, I'm an HR director, whether as an investor, or whether it's within tech, or whether it's within further education. We bring a variety of skills, and we all have adjacent focus on we all touch that world of work, and we all touch that skills landscape in different ways, and so we bring that highly relevant perspective. But although we bring something unique, we operate as a complementary team. We fill in each other's gaps. But what we all have, and hopefully it will come, I'm sure it will come out throughout this session, is that passion for the mission of UFI. And we take real pride and pleasure in the impact that we make and how it transforms lives and opportunities. And that's just so important. And a week like this really gives us the opportunity to talk to our community. And we do that regularly, not just in a week like this, but in lots of different ways, whether it's through the funding work we do, the consultation processes, or as Dom has stressed in our partnerships. So we get to hear firsthand how the tech is being applied to those new situations and the problems you're trying to solve, and together we can come up with those ideas. So we stay relevant in a number of different ways, and and it's important for us that we learn from you as well, that we, what can you help us learn so that we can then share what we learn within the ecosystem. And that is why, again, those external experts, those partnerships, they just bring in additional perspectives and inspiration as to what else we can do. And that really reflects, UFI as an organisation, is that we're all about learning. We review, we reflect, we revise after every cycle of work. And those reviews are really important. And it really helps us as trustees understand what has worked, what hasn't, what we could differently, and what we can really leverage, because what we really ought to be promoting and sharing, and really through our public affairs work, really making sure that we're talking, we're amplifying what we do all the time. And I would simply say that what I've learned over the years, and I'm sure my fellow trustees would say the same, is that the more you put in and engage with the business you support, the more you get out on a personal basis. And that what makes keeping relevant and keeping up to date and keeping involved a real pleasure.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Julia. So it's really obvious the passion that the trustees have around UFI. Obviously, that work interests you, but as individuals, are there things that you think are particularly exciting that UFI does? I'm going to ask Dom, what do you feel about it?
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole breadth of stuff that we do. I mean, my background's apprenticeships. Recently sold an apprenticeship business, but working previously for Microsoft in helping as a consultant to help them build their external Microsoft external apprenticeship activity. But it's interesting, my kind of first foray into work was in IT recruitment. So I've always felt really passionate about the need to get people properly into jobs and giving people those opportunities, and just thinking about some of the ways we used to bring people into careers. We never really were giving people a chance. So I think amazing, the things that really excite me, I'm really excited by the ventures activity. I think that's so cool, and it's not only us funding projects, but it's us helping build and then attract further investment for growing VocTech companies that are just really mission aligned with us and can give people those opportunities. So recent ventures investments like Sonic Jobs, for example, Caps Lock as well, who I know they were on one of the sessions at the showcase, and that was just fascinating. It was really excellent to hear them, the passion of the owners, the impact that they make. I think things like that, when you hear them and you really get into you speak to some of these business owners and the difference that we're making, I think it's really good to hear. Another real quick thing though, and I've mentioned it before, I'm probably going to mention it a bunch of other times on this call as well, is the partnerships bit. I think that's quite exciting for me as an individual to think, right, we do stuff and we make an impact. How much bigger an impact can we make in the coming months, years, working with the right mission aligned partners? And I think that's going to be quite exciting.
That's great. Thanks, Dom. And how about Charlotte? Are you able to give us some of your thoughts?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks so much for putting this together and having all of us trustees and being able to share some of our thoughts and our passion for the organisation. I've always worked in technology, right from my very first sort of main job having left university, which was for the very first corporate ISP in the UK. And at the time when people were saying, internet, got no idea what that is, don't even have a network. And one of the things that was so apparent right from the start was the incredible opportunity that technology, digital, and sort of how you bring all of that together, the opportunity that can make for society, for individuals, for businesses as a whole. But what was also very apparent is as we were driving these incredible innovations from a technology perspective, really changing the way that people look at their lives, everything from, how do you do your shopping in the day to, how do you talk to your doctor? How do you learn? How do you go to school? Everything was changing because of digital. But one thing that wasn't really changing was how do you access the jobs that go with digital? How do you start to build and learn the skills, and how do you learn and develop? And so that was for me, one of the reasons why I was so passionate about joining the UFI board, and there is a line in the UFI vision mission statement that says, we catalyse a fundamental shift in how individuals, employers and UK society view, embrace and benefit from vocational skills development through digital innovation. That's everything that was missing from the UK. How do you build the skills? There was this fundamental shift in our society that wasn't being mapped, and UFI really stepped up and filled that gap. For me, one of the organisations that, it was one of the first organisations that UFI helped and support, and at the time was called White Hat, subsequently became Multiverse. They're also an organisation whose mission was all around how to fill that fundamental shift and that fundamental gap that we were seeing between advances in society and how employers and employees had the opportunity to build them. The other thing about me, I was an apprentice, and yet there were so few apprentices at that point in the UK marketplace. And people were like, oh, no, go to university, go to university. And Multiverse were the very first, organisation to stand up and say, why? Why do we need to go to university? We're fundamentally shifting everything else. Why can't we fundamentally shift the way that employers are viewing talent and the way that talent comes through? UFI saw that incredible work that they were doing. They invested in them. They supported them. And now Multiverse, over 5,000 apprenticeships have graduated from Multiverse, working in over 200 of the world's largest and smallest companies. And each one of those graduates says, I would never, ever had that opportunity if somebody hadn't have started this fundamental shift in how we approach digital skills. So that's just some of my thoughts.
Oh, that's fantastic, Charlotte. Thank you for sharing them. I think you'll all agree with me. There's some really inspirational stuff behind our trustees, and hopefully you can now see what they are able to bring to the board. My next question is to John. What do you see is the biggest opportunity for UFI?
Thanks, Karen. And hello to everyone. Just to give you a bit of background, I'm currently the Chief Executive Officer of a hotel group in London, actually the largest owner-operated hotel group with 18 hotels and over 5,000 rooms. And I pinch myself some days because, my background is pretty humble in the sense that I came from a small town in South Wales, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And as many of you know, those were tough times, from the problems of the early 70s and inflation in an industrial part of the world, and in the 80s through the miners' strike and all those challenges. But what struck me, as a young boy at that time, was how that developed into a lack of aspiration and underachievement, through my time at school for many people, and how that background has sustained itself in terms of people's opportunities as we've gone, as we've gone through the last 30 or 40 years. So the biggest opportunity for UFI is to access, those members of our communities that, for whatever reason, have not been able to have the opportunity in the education, and that's driven, disparity and, an inability to access the workplace in the way that could enhance their potential. And I feel strongly about that because, as someone working in hospitality, obviously we are desperately in need of employees and to tap the skills of those people who can work front of house. And it's simply a real challenge for us because people's confidence and ability to put themselves forward for great roles, interacting with people serving people, has been impacted. So the greatest opportunity for UFI, particularly in my sector, is to access those that talent in a way that will give people the confidence, through VocTech learning to make an enormous contribution to the workplace, to interact with society, and to tap into their talent. So I feel really proud of the impact we're seeing, obviously not directly in hospitality, but in those industries where there's talent in the UK that we can access through direct investment in grants or UFI ventures. And I think the VocTech Challenge is an important piece of that work, because it's pulled insight and expertise from across the whole sector of the UFI family, and it really taps into this focus on giving people the confidence and the motivation to access learning and to feel confident about moving into the workplace and making a contribution that will enrich their lives.
Thank you, John. I think that's a really interesting perspective to give us. And Anthony, if I could ask you the same question, with working in education, obviously you're sort of almost at the coalface there, so it'd be great to get your thoughts on what you think the biggest opportunity would be.
Hi, thanks very much, Karen. For me, I would guess the biggest opportunity is to continue making the massive impact which UFI makes, because what I've really noticed is when we get a good project, it can be magnified and it can roll out so much. And in particular with the FE sector, because although all colleges are different, lots and lots of colleges can share in similar activities and practices. And so when you see something which can work, for me, it's like gold dust, because it's something which can actually be rolled out across the whole section and actually make a real difference. And I think you'll know the products of the company which I particularly love is a company called CentriTech, who we bumped into, funnily enough, at the AOC conference yesterday, where we're up for a Beacon Award, I must add, for effective use of technology, which is ironic with me being the CEO, as I know nothing about technology, even though I'm on this board. But I'm good at dreaming about what it can do. And that's what UFI's opportunity is. The opportunity is to realise dreams about using technology which can impact thousands upon thousands of learners. And that's what we can do, particularly with our relationships with FE colleges and other stakeholders in that sector. So that's the opportunity as I see it.
That's great. And to stay with you for a moment, Anthony, how much do you interact with VocTech in your day-to-day life at the college there? Is there anything UFI has done that you've taken back into your day job at all?
Well, that sounded a bit echoey, I apologise. I find that we're a college of technology, and so we put technology into everything. We're not very loyal, though. So that means we only use the technology which really works. And if it doesn't work or something better comes along, we'll just skip onto that. We're absolutely promiscuous in that respect, which makes me feel terrible sometimes. But one of the ones I'm really intrigued by is the use of chatbots, because some of the projects have actually used those. And I really think that that's something which could make a difference to the sector. And the general use of software for analysing the situation where people are, like BSK, but again, like the CentriTech stuff, which actually gives you a tailored program based upon what your individual needs are. And I think that's what's particularly brilliant about the use of tech now.
Yeah.
It can tailor itself to individual needs. And that impacts all the time where we are. Yeah.
And I think as a charity, that's something that we're seeing more and more, particularly. My next question is to Jeff. UFI states that it wants to champion the access to skills for all. So how are you ensuring the organisations you support are working for everyone?
Thanks, Karen. I'm Jeff Greenwich. I'm the Director for Diversity at the Education and Training Foundation and the Association of Colleges. And access to skills for all is smack bang in the arena in which I work. And in fact, I started off my career as a teacher, and then worked with the first iteration of UFI back in 1999, when people said that we couldn't teach basic skills, we couldn't teach anything really through online learning. And look where we are today, so many years after that. And the skills for all thing is really important, because learners are all different. They think differently, they learn in different ways, and it would be a shame to try and teach people in all the same way. And technology provides the opportunity for teachers to engage, support, teach, and assess learners in multiple ways, so that the learners can have that equity, really, that opportunity to have different approaches to meet their particular needs. And at UFI, we actively and deliberately fund a wide range of projects for that reason. It's because we know that different ways of looking at a complex problem is actually what's needed. So not every solution works for everyone, but the ethos underpinning what we do is very much built around that strong desire to understand what learners need, and therefore to put those systems and that support infrastructure in place to support the individual needs of learners. In terms of how we make our grant assessments, is very much based on understanding, yes, the technological perspective of things, but equally importantly, it's the learner perspective and the educational perspective. So our assessment grant funding round is based on those three principles. We understand what the technology can do, what the educational output could be, and actually what's that audience, what's that learner experience as they go through the program. And the main reason for that strong focus on the learner and on the audience is that it's very much focused on what the learner's needs are, what the challenges are, and understanding that those needs and those challenges are really understood and at the forefront of what we're doing. One important thing that we insist on doing is not defining the learners that we're looking to impact.
I think we've lost Jeff briefly there. Do bear with us. While we're waiting for Jeff to join us again, Rebecca, would you perhaps like to give us your view on that question too?
Absolutely. I'll pick up where Jeff left off, and because I think we probably both say exactly the same thing, which is that we're really clear that the learners we want to impact they come from a huge range of different kind of sectors, different geographies, different communities, and there's always lots of different reasons why learners might be far away from the opportunity to learn, or why they might be far away from the job market. And what we know is that the organisations that come to us, the organisations that we work with, they understand the audience that they're serving, and they can best articulate what the challenges are, and why our funding can really have a huge impact. And I think for us, what we know is that whilst we can support organisations in the way they might work with tech, and we can help people think about all sorts of things, the one thing that they absolutely need to have at their heart is an understanding of the audience they're serving, and a really clear understanding of the challenge that they're looking to face. And I'd also just echo Jeff's point about the really deliberate focus on a diversity of projects and also ventures that we fund, because we know that it's not a one solution fits all answer, and actually it's really important that we have that kind of richness of portfolio that helps to address the broad range of challenges that we know are out there.
That's really great. I think we may have Jeff back with us now. Sorry to lose you briefly there, Jeff. Did you have some key points that you'd like to just summarise quickly before we move on?
Yeah, I think, thanks, Karen. Really, it's back to that point of that we are looking to actively address different learners and different challenges, and finding a range of support mechanisms for individuals, and in doing so, listening to the audience, listening to the practitioners, in terms of what they're looking to build for the learners. And the final point really is that because we have different thought processes around our board, that actually allows us to have that diversity of thought, which equips us much better to produce a product that meets the needs of multiple learners. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that's some really interesting points there, and I'm sure everyone in the audience will agree with me. Now, the next big question, which is probably something we get asked quite a lot, is, and I'm going to ask John this, why is it UFI funds what it does and not other things?
That's a fantastic question, actually, and I guess it comes down to two things. Firstly, UFI is independent, so it can listen to the community and address the challenges that the more disadvantaged people in society face, without all the politics and so on and so forth. I think the second thing is that it's self-funded, and UFI has the capital, it has the funds to address those needs and to take some risks, quite frankly, in terms of the shape of the money that's offered and the way we work. So, that's quite liberating to be able to do something for the common good without, a bunch of stakeholders, offering different views or having to sort of get things approved. And, 10 million pounds of funding for ventures was put forward under our mission, and to be able to put that forward and to support those organizations and people that are driving innovative solutions to learning in the tech sector is so important. So my key message really is it's independence, it's having the funds, it's listening and learning, and doing something that we all have a shared belief in.
Yeah, that's great, and we are in a very privileged position to have that. I'd be interested to know your thoughts, Rebecca, from the executive team about how the senior management team within UFI would like to answer that question, and how we come to agreements on what we're funding.
Thanks, Karen. Yes, as both you and John have said, we are in a really privileged position having that kind of autonomy, and it does give us the flexibility to be able to respond to what we see, but also be able to respond quickly as and when we need to, which of course we were able to do in 2020 when the first lockdown was announced. That the way we're funded meant that we could move really, really fast and getting support out there. I think the other thing that we always have to be conscious of is, of course, that resource is finite, and therefore sometimes the decisions we make about what we do fund are difficult ones, and we have to be very careful and thoughtful with our resources, that both from a kind of ensuring that we don't overstretch them in terms of money, but also in terms of sticking with our very clear ethos about demonstration through doing, and also giving the organisations we work with the best chance of success. And that means ensuring that we're able to give them the time and access to the expertise that and really kind of focus on how they interact with each other and kind of peer-to-peer learning and our cohort model. And so we do, and I kind of said this through the showcase as well, we try and be really, really thoughtful about all the activity we undertake and the way that activity impacts positively on the organisations we support and work with. So every decision we make is done, there's a lot of thought that has gone into it, and there's always very, very strong reasons for why we fund the things we fund, and also, of course, why we don't fund the things that we don't fund.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting, and obviously for myself working within the team, we can see how much of that sort of wrapper around the money goes in from the support that the team are able to offer to our projects, which I think really makes us quite unique to some other funders. My next question is to to Charlotte first of all. Charlotte, I'm really interested. Obviously, you're very busy in your day-to-day job, but how has the last year affected you? How you see your role as a trustee at UFI? Because obviously, you know, that everyone's been very busy and things have changed. So it'd be really interesting to see how your role as a trustee has impacted in the last year.
So first of all, I think that the last year has just shown how incredibly vital the work of UFI and all of the projects that we support is. I mean, you know, speaking as a parent myself, digital learning was very interesting, trying to do homeschooling when really some of the tools that we had available just weren't fit for purpose. So if from a personal perspective, it's really given me added impetus into how UFI can really support changing society's view of digital learning. I really just see that, you know, the pandemic has highlighted exactly why organisations like UFI are so important in the UK economy and landscape. For me also, just to pick up on something that Dom said earlier with regard to partnerships. I mean, the other thing that the pandemic has really highlighted, not just in our space, but actually across all ecosystems, is the importance of partnerships. And we saw that with regard to things like the creation of the vaccine, and how individuals, companies, regions, and communities responded to the pandemic. We got through it because of partnerships. We got through it because of complementary organisations, and they could have been in completely separate industries working together to create a positive outcome. And so I actually see that as one of the positive outcomes of the pandemic. And as we move forward into what will become a more increasingly digital focused post-pandemic world, how do we leverage those partnerships, not just between our UFI community, but how do we bring in other communities to really layer on and, you know, replicate some of the incredible advances that we saw that came out of those partnerships in COVID? It was a conversation that we were having pre-pandemic, and we were saying, you know, within the next 5 years, we've got to get better at doing multi-sector partnerships. Well, the pandemic really accelerated that, and I actually think that that's a good thing, and I'm looking forward to seeing likewise with Dom, you know, how that really affects us in the future.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Charlotte. It's an interesting perspective. And Julia, perhaps you could give us your opinion on that as well. How have you been impacted as a trustee?
Oh, I would echo a lot of what Charlotte said. I suppose the first thing I'd say is that, you know, given in my line of work as an HR director of a large corporate, Lloyd's of London, you know, the last 12 months, well, the last 18 months has just been like no other. I feel like I've done 5 years work in 2. And it was a people-led crisis, and therefore, you know, huge amount of work. And so giving as much time as I would like to UFI has been much harder. But if anything, the work that UFI has done in the last, during the pandemic has really reminded me as why I'm a trustee of an organisation, because the purpose of UFI and the impact that it's had, you know, really has really been a sort of a, you know, for me, a beacon of, you know, my way forwards. And I was so proud of the response of the UFI team to the COVID challenge, and really how within weeks, you know, of going into that first lockdown, you know, the opportunity of VocTech Now sort of had been crystallized and come up as a highly relevant solution, and really what became a critical lifeline for so many organizations. And as Charlotte just said, we talked for, you know, for some years since I'd become a trustee, as to how were we going to accelerate interest in, you know, and how we were going to accelerate the digital uptake. And really, here was our moment. And, you know, you either seize the moment, or, you know, you live with the regret, you know, forever, knowing that you didn't. And really, you know, for me, UFI absolutely stepped up. And when we really were all in it together in those early days, UFI was there with a really simplified, easily accessible funding solution and proposition that stayed absolutely true to our core mission, but crucially gave support and stimulus to those organisations that were suddenly facing this massive challenge of moving to a fully remote learning offering when they really had no idea of how to, and many lacking just the basic sort of capability to do that. And the fact that it was just put in so smoothly, as if it was what we did all the time, was just hugely, hugely impressive. So really affirming for me, as a trustee, really affirming. And at a time when, we all needed those connections, and we were all in that first period. I'm sure we all, we all connected with people in ways that we hadn't for some years. The UFI community, and that really expanded and suddenly collectively rose to that challenge, supporting and educating each other. And, and the impact that all of that had was, and the feedback we've had from how the support we gave, it's just been quite humbling. And for me, the opportunity now to take those, to take that learning and really apply it, and really continuing to develop that digital uptake is just so exciting. So for me, it just reaffirmed why I'm a trustee.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you, Julia. And I think, yes, we'll all agree what a fantastic response that UFI was able to do so quickly when we saw the pandemic hitting. Before I move on to our last question, I just want to pop back. I know, Jeff, you had a couple of points that you'd like to comment upon.
Yeah, just something that Charlotte said about Multiverse, and actually about the pandemic, because I had occasion to go and visit Multiverse in my day job, in a sense, to understand the diversity that's being delivered through that method. And what really struck me was the not just the numbers that of individuals who've gone through that particular apprenticeship program, but the quality of the delivery, and how that's almost, in a sense, challenging the perspectives of our quality frameworks, because we have support, we have engagement, we have support, we have different ways of learning within that particular model, which is actually giving really very, very strong outcomes. So our Ofsted, etc., they've got good quality systems there. Ofsted says so. We're actually shifting the way the pedagogy is delivering through one small seed funding. Quite a big impact is spreading, and that model is being shared now with further education systems. So I think the impact is not just on the one organization, on the one cohort, but it extends right across, potentially right across the further education sector. Just want to make that point, Charlotte, from what you said about Multiverse.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing that point to our attention. And then finally, Dom, I'd really like to ask you, it's probably quite an all-encompassing question, or maybe really difficult for you to answer, but where would you like to see UFI in 5 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, it is a good question, but I think we do have that vision. I think there's a couple of things for me. So I think a big thing is not just continuing to fund, which we will do, but it's making sure that we're driving usage as well. So it's got to be, I think all of us have talked about this, it's seeing the impact. I think picking up on a point that Jeff was just making there, it's not just one project to one specific area, it's how that can be applied and used in other organizations. And I think picking up one of the questions in the chat from Ian, I think a big part of that is going to be how we get the FE establishments to really share the same mindset as some others, like trailblazers like Anthony, for example. So how do we do that? Well, that's going to come very much from partnerships, which is another big area. And I know, I've talked about it a lot. Charlotte's talked about a lot of it as well. So I think over the next 5 years, establishing those partnerships to really drive usage, but also to change the mindsets of organizations, especially FE colleges, who we really want them to be using this technology, because it's as Jeff was saying, it's changing the ways that things can be done. It's really, I think it's important that we do that to keep pace with the changing workforce, the changing workplace, and the needs of employers. FE has to, and vocational learning has to stay relevant in that side of things. I think also we will see the ventures portfolio demonstrating returns, which I think is great. It's been a fantastic start to it, but and we've got a really talented team of people within UFI Ventures. I think we'll continue to build and work with those organisations that we're investing in, but I think it'll be important and exciting to see how those organisations return. Possibly some of them may well actually have exited by that point and sold to much bigger organisations, which I think it'll be really exciting to see then how can that drive the change and the adoption of the technologies in an even bigger scale. Possibly picking up on a question that Sean put in around, does this mean we're not now a time limited organisation because we have this investment arm? I don't think it means that. I think what we're doing here is really using an element of our funding to not only prove that individual projects work, but this is a viable sector to invest in, and it's a viable sector for investors to really see that they're going to get great returns. But it's an important sector investor as well. So I think we very much see ourselves as doing that. You never know. In 5 years, some of these folks might have taken off like Multiverse, for example, and that will be fantastic. We always need to be flexible, but I think at the moment it's very much, we're continuing to demonstrate by doing, and in this instance, we're demonstrating to the wider investment market that they need to kind of get their act together and continue to support and help grow these organisations. Final piece, probably worth mentioning, is how and it kind of comes back to the comms piece, comes back to the partnerships bit, but it's the public affairs side, and I think it's very much absolutely not seen as a lobby organisation. We really, that's not where we're at, but I think helping demonstrate to policymakers that the technologies that we're funding, the problems that those technologies are looking to address, are something that is really important that they need to also reflect on and see how technology can make a significant change in skills. I think the policy piece is important because if we don't get that right and policymakers don't get that right, another question, I think that Ian Grayling, it's the same question that Ian raised about FE. It's all right us demonstrating stuff, but if the policies and the regulations mean that FE leaders are reluctant to take risks, and these might be small risks, they might be risks that are actually going to benefit their organisations and their learners, but because of the policy landscape is sometimes quite difficult and the regulations are quite tight, I think that's something that what hopefully we can do is really help people see there are other ways to do this, and we need the policy to move with the workplace changes and the technology. So quite a few things there, probably not as coherent a vision as we somewhat could have, but I think we're getting there.
No, I think that's great. And thanks for trying to answer those questions that we've had in the chat there, Dom. We did have a couple of pre-submitted questions prior to the session. So if we can have a quick look at those now. This is from Anthony Basil at Solent University. What can universities do to collaborate with UFI to research and develop online learning opportunities? And I'll open the floor to that if anyone's willing to have an answer. Dom?
Right, yeah, I'll jump in initially. I mean, I think like any organisation who we fund, if it's addressing vocational learning, and especially if it's something that can democratise access to vocational learning and ultimately get these people into jobs, we'll fund anyone. We're not shy in that aspect. So I think we'd encourage any organisation who can meet our mission, help further our mission, and are going to really support those learners and get those sometimes learners that I think Rebecca highlighted this on the showcase on Wednesday, that are sometimes even kind of third thought down the list. They're just the unloved. Well, they shouldn't be. So if there's projects, and I think being key here, though, it's demonstrating by doing. So it can't just be a research project. It's got to be something that has an effect. So I think if they meet those criteria, absolutely, we'll always consider.
That's great. Thanks, Dom. I'm not sure. I think we've got time for the second. Oh, Anthony, you have something to say?
I was just going to add very quickly to that. The most important thing, I think, for universities, if they identify a project which they think can help SMEs, is to make sure it's transferable. Try and choose things which other universities could potentially use so it can spread across the sector. Cheers.
That's a useful point. Thank you, Anthony. We've got one last pre-submitted, and I do want to address Maureen's question in the chat as well, very quickly. So our second submitted question from Joanne Butcher at developingexperts.com. What is the organisation's vision in helping, supporting and enabling SMEs to grow their potential? Would anyone like to address that quickly for us, please?
I can take a stab at that one. So as we've alluded to, one of the biggest problems in organizational growth right now is the access to skills. And also where there is often access to the talent pool, which, as we know, coming post-pandemic is actually smaller than before, talent is becoming incredibly expensive. And so by the work that we are doing in investing in these incredible programs that really are developing and enhancing the digital skills in the vocational workplace and enabling that talent development, we are enabling the skills that SMEs themselves need to continue to grow and develop and for them to drive their business needs. I think one of the things that, as we alluded to earlier, that has been missing in how we support developing the economy across the whole of the UK, not just, you know, large enterprise, small enterprise, is this: how do we drive digital skills? We constantly keep talking about reskilling. Well, why are we always talking about reskilling? Why don't we just enable methodologies to give people the right skills in the first place? And so that is one of the key areas that we can support SMEs. Of course, we can, if SMEs have amazing concepts for digital vocation, digital training, as you've just heard from Dom, you know, we look at granting to anywhere. But our main area of focus is that skills for work, is driving development, and is enabling the growth of the SME sector through driving digital skills and vocational training.
That's great. Thank you, Charlotte. And we think we have just one last quick question from Maureen in the chat, who said, from your individual perspectives, what do you see as the biggest challenges or gaps in the UK skills landscape in the next 5 years? So that's a great question for us to end on, I think. Anyone willing to take that first, please? Julia. If we have Julia and then Tom, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'll just give a very quick perspective from an employer perspective, because we have this lost generation now of education. We've had so many. We can all see the impact that the last 18 months has had on our school children. And so there's a generation now where the basics aren't there, and the basics aren't there both in maths and English, as well as the basics of digital. Digital should now be considered one of those basics, and so that we're equipping people for the future. And so for me, there is, there's how do we close that gap on the basics of learning, and secondly, how do we also build that? How do we cross that divide around the soft skills that they need to be able to operate and work in a workplace? Because so many have become, the move to hybrid and remote working and remote learning has meant that actually their confidence in social settings, to build relationships, to network, to even just to make a phone call. It's employers who are picking up that that deficiency. So in many ways, the skills gap, in some ways, the pandemic has widened the skills gap, because it's added more things into the mix, even though it's given us an absolutely invaluable solution in terms of on digital solutions. It has just so it's been both a help and a curse, I'd say, to the skills landscape. That's just a personal perspective.
That's an interesting perspective. Thank you, Dom. And then I think Jeff would like to comment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I'd have put my hand up earlier, Julia, because I was going to say all of that. But no, I think I fundamentally agree. If you look at, especially in the businesses that I've been involved with around apprenticeships, sometimes there's an education piece there on the fundamentals and the basics, and I think that may get wider. So we do need to address that, and digital can play a huge part in it. But I think the other side of it is, there are some fundamental building blocks with automation, and as many roles will still become automated, which is an opportunity. Things like maybe that next stage of soft skills, so things like problem solving, critical thinking, how you coordinate with others, I suppose even service orientation, those kind of skills, they're going to be important, and they are going to be challenges if we don't address them over the next 5 years in order for the UK to remain competitive. So I think if we can do that, if we can do it using really innovative digital solutions, if they're appropriate, I think that could see us actually, continuing, if not improving, where we are at the moment.
That's great. And just in our last minute, Jeff, please, we'd love to hear your comments as well. Thank you.
It's really coming from the learner's perspective again, the people's perspective, in that people will be changing jobs a number of times over their lifetime. So skills will need to be upskilled. People need to be upskilled at different periods in their life, and it's really about having access to those tools at a just-in-time, in a just-in-time ways, so that people can have them available to use at any time that they want to upskill and to change jobs. It's about really being accessible. So I think the tech has potential to really allow people to change jobs and to have skills in an accessible way.
That's a really key point, isn't it? Well, I'd like to say thank you all for joining us today. I think it's been a really interesting session, and I do hope those of you who have joined us have found it useful and interesting to get the perspective of our Board of Trustees on how UFI sees itself moving forwards. Before you go, I would just like to remind you that we do have one more session this afternoon at 2 o'clock, and you can register for that if you haven't done so already. And that is looking at how digital technology can support colleges with lost learning, and that's going to be led by our Deputy Chief Executive, Louise Rowland. So do make sure that you sign up and join us for that last session. And thank you once again, everyone, for joining us this morning. It's been absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Thank you all.